Water's Small Business Webinar Power Pivot. I'm Gale Jones Carson, Memphis Water's Vice President of Community and External Affairs. Thank you for being with us today. Today, we're going to discuss human resources challenges during the pandemic. Some of the issues that we will touch on include part-time off, vaccination status, child care, health insurance, Portability and Accountability Act, which is HIPAA, and the Families First Corona Response Act. And we are also going to touch on compassion being a priority in the workplace during the pandemic. Our guests today are Lular, Gaddy, who has more than 2 decades of experience in designing and leading the execution of human resource policies and HR operations across industries, including manufacturing and distribution. She currently works at Buckman as a human resources business partner. Lou, thank you for being here with us today. We greatly appreciate your presence. Our next guest is attorney Alan Crone, who is the founder of the Crone Law Firm. The firm represents employees, executives, entrepreneurs in all aspects of employment law. Attorney Crone's political career, he has served in a number of roles, including a member of the Memphis City Council and as a special counsel to the mayor and senior policy advisor for the city of Memphis, Mayor Jim Strickland. Those watching today, please place your questions in the Q&A section if you have any questions that you want us to address. So Alan and Lou, let's start out. What is the Families First Corona Response Act?
Well, the act was passed in the early days of the pandemic, and it was Congress's response to the government shutdown, or the economic shutdown, and it provides a number of things. But one thing that it provides for is paid leave due to if you have certain pre-qualifying conditions in terms of you getting the virus, or someone you're giving care to getting the virus, or if your children are not able to go to their daycare or their school because of the pandemic. And it also provided some, at the same time the CARES Act was passed, it also provided enhanced federal unemployment insurance. That part is no longer really applicable in Tennessee, although it has extended the amount of time that you can draw what I call regular state unemployment. So it was an attempt by the Congress to, soften the blow, if you will, to the economic impact caused by the virus itself and the shutdown of the economy back in 2020.
So it is still effective, and it did not end December 2020.
Well, parts of it ended in December 2020, and parts of it were extended, and it's still a tool for people to use, although a lot of it is really not as applicable anymore, particularly the part about schools, because schools have come back and so forth.
Okay, so is there a number of days that companies can limit their employees' use of this act?
Well, it follows part of it follows the Family Medical Leave Act, and you get an extra 6 weeks essentially of protection for paid leave, and then another few weeks for unpaid leave. You can also bundle that with the Family Medical Leave Act in certain circumstances. It's very technical. It is also really case specific because of the requirements that you either be involved, sick yourself or a caregiver, And so the benefits really depend on your specific situation.
Okay, so Lou, let's talk about, have you had any challenges at Buckman using this federal law?
So I think, Gail, Alan, you can correct me if I'm wrong, but there is a threshold for the number of employees you have to have before you're actually covered under this. Is that correct, Alan?
Well, it's kind of a reverse. It's kind of a reverse deal. You can't have more than
500.
500 employees. If you have more, then it's not covered. Usually, it's a base.
Really?
You know.
I mean, so if you have more than 500 employees, this federal law does not apply to that company. To that company,
correct.
Correct.
Correct. It was really meant to help, and I think the thinking was that. The larger companies would have the ability to extend leave and be more flexible, but the smaller you are, the more you might need the government help.
Okay, that's very interesting. I wasn't aware of that. So let's move to HIPAA. So some companies, well, first let's define what HIPAA is, and then we will talk about who violates HIPAA by discussing certain aspects of employees having COVID. So can we just explain what HIPAA actually is? And Alan, I saw you on Live at 9 talking about HIPAA, just breaking it down.
So basically what HIPAA says is that you can't ask employees about their, like, any medical conditions that would prevent them from doing their job. So if you want to ask an employee if they've been vaccinated, that's information that they voluntarily give to the company. It's not something at this point that we have decided to mandate, and I don't think legally that you can mandate that they tell you. We have put incentives in place for employees to be vaccinated. And with those incentives, we ask that they give us that information so that we can try to get an idea of a percentage of how many employees that we have that has been vaccinated. Right now, we're all, for the most part, we've been working remotely like a lot of other companies since last year. So we're not coming back into the office until we have a certain percentage of employees that have been vaccinated. So right now, we're trying to get them to voluntarily, take the vaccine. Again, there's incentives that we've put out there for them to do so. So until we reach that magical number that our CEO has put out there for us right now, we will continue to work remotely. But those employees that are essential to be on site, we have put things in place to prevent them from being, to limit the exposure to COVID.
Okay, so, you touched on something that is a national debate right now in this country, and that is whether or not companies can mandate that their employees be vaccinated. Well, I have seen and read a number of companies, including St. Jude, that are saying that if you are not vaccinated by the end of September, that you will no longer be employed by St. Jude. Then there are other companies I know of that have given their employees a date specific to be vaccinated. And if they don't get vaccinated, they will have to be tested once a week. And more than likely, their insurance will not continue to cover the testing costs. So, Alan, can we discuss the legalities of public versus private companies requiring their employees to be vaccinated?
Sure. As you may know, in the United States of America, most of the states are employment at will states, which means as a worker, you have no rights, none, unless the government has granted you rights through a statute or common law protections. And so right now, there's no law that says for private employers that they can't mandate a vaccine. And in fact, employers have mandated all kinds of health requirements over the years for various things, and this is no different. Now, in the state of Tennessee, there is a debate about whether or not the legislature last year enacted a prohibition against state, municipal, and county employees from a vaccine mandate by if they're public employees of one of those entities. Many people believe that the statute is broad enough to include those governmental employees, and there are some governmental lawyers who believe that it's not that broad. And as far as I know, no subdivision of the state has required vaccines as a mandate. Germantown came very close, and they backed off of that. There may be others that have that I'm just not aware of. But
Alan, let me stop. So the mandate that may apply to government would say that they don't have to mandate vaccination?
The state law would say they can't.
Oh, they can't.
That the statute was aimed primarily at government subdivisions from requiring a general vaccine mandate for the general public. There's some legislative history that would indicate that the legislators themselves believed that they were also prohibiting cities, counties, and the state from mandating that their own employees get the vaccine. That's what's kind of an open question right now. Now there are, and I have talked to dozens of people, maybe not hundreds, but dozens of people and companies that are trying to work their way through this. And it's, I have told my clients that if they are a business, they need to really think long and hard about the mandate, not because it's good or bad, but because it's very, very complicated. And one of the big complications is if you have a religious objection or if you have a disability that makes it medically dangerous for you to get the vaccine, that you can be exempted from the policy, or that your company has to give you a reasonable accommodation. And I think that there are some workplaces where that mandate probably makes a lot of sense. There's some where it may not make any sense at all, but most of them are going to fall in the middle. And if you've got a diverse workforce with different religious beliefs, different medical conditions, your HR department's going to be spending a lot of time trying to figure out how to apply that mandate across the board. So it's not illegal if you're a private company to impose a vaccine mandate, but I think I think Lou would agree, you've got to be very careful how you do it, and you've got to think it through and think of all the different ways that somebody could come at you, with a problem and how you're going to deal with it. And you may just be better off staying remote, or you may be better off with masks and social distancing. Every workplace is going to be different, but the bottom line, I think we all agree, is we need to make sure that we don't get people sick.
Well, I appreciate that response, but one of the issues that just came up this week is that one of the state legislatures in Nashville, in Tennessee, is questioning. She wants a definition of at work, the state having the right to, she wants a definition for at will, working at will, employees having the right to work, or companies not owing employees that right. She's trying to get a definition of that. If there is already a law, what is the issue?
Well, I don't know. I can tell you that the employment at will doctrine is well settled. It's a legal doctrine that goes all the way back to medieval England. I always say think lords and serfs. And basically the employment at will doctrine is the employment relationship is a voluntary one, go in both directions, and you can quit anytime. If you've got a job, you can quit. If the employer wants to fire you, she can fire you at any time for any reason, as long as it's not an illegal reason. And that's the employment at will doctrine. And statutorily, it might be good to have a definition that's a statute, because then it might be easier to find. But I think that's going to be a very, with this legislature, I think it's going to be a very heavy lift to get them to do anything to confine the employment at will doctrine at all.
So that applies to union employees as well?
Well, it applies to everybody. Now, union employees have a contract. Yeah. And so if you have a contract, then you can agree to limit the employment at will doctrine in the contract, and that's what they do. So that's also an exception is if the parties, either an individual or as a collective, like a union, if they agree to certain terms and conditions of employment, then the employment at will doctrine no longer applies, because now you have a contract between the parties.
Okay, so Lou, you've mentioned that you all at Buckman are working remote. Say at some point you all decide to come back to work, whether it's phased in and you eventually get to 100%. What if some employees decide they don't want to come back? They don't want to work in the office. How are you all going to handle that?
Gale, that is a good question. And right now, we don't have an answer for that. We're still working through that, because we do have people that we know that are not comfortable coming back in the office. They feel that since they have gone remotely, that their position can be worked that way. So why would we subject them to having to come into the office and maybe getting sick? Because as I stated, we don't have 100% of our employees that have gone, taken the vaccine, and I doubt that we'll get to 100%. So there are going to be people that they're not going to take the vaccine. And I'm speaking from an HR perspective and not so much as Buckman right now. I just think it's wise that companies really think, long and hard before they go to trying to mandate people to take the vaccine. Because as Alan said, if someone takes it, they have a medical condition, it makes that worse, then it's just more risk that you're putting on the company. So you have to outweigh that. And I don't think the risk is worth taking. But as far as our employees, I think we're going to have to do it on a case-by-case basis and not just do a blanket policy that covers everyone. When that situation arises, we're going to have to handle them as best as possible as we see fit, working with the employee to try to understand their perspective, where they're coming from. We're going to walk a tightrope when it comes to doing what's best for the company and doing what's best for the employee.
Okay, well, we speak about doing what's best for the company. Okay, some employees, they have a fearful of returning to work because, they don't want to be vaccinated. They don't want to be around others. They don't know if other employees have been vaccinated. So what about the employees who have been vaccinated, who have been working remotely for over a year, and they just feel that they can be productive at home, and they just don't want to go back to the office?
So what we did when COVID started, we have a group of people that we call essential workers and non-essential workers, which is, I'm sure you're familiar with the term. So if we have people that we have deemed or considered that they are non-essential, that means that they can do their job remotely, they can do it anywhere in the country. So we work directly with that manager to try to make sure that we're all on the same page. Is that a position that can work from home? We are facing so many challenges with filling positions now that we are actually looking at recruiting people that may not even sit in our Memphis office. We're looking at people. We have positions that, again, that we've had a hard time filling. People are just not comfortable, coming into the office. And for those positions that we don't have to have in the office, we are considering allowing those people to work remotely.
Okay, so Alan, she touched on something about employees not only working remotely, but possibly working in other cities. The City of Memphis employees and MLGW are governed by a city ordinance that initially, when it was passed, City of Memphis employees and MLGW employees had to live in the City of Memphis. The third time the vote was taken, voters voted to allow both bodies, all employees, to live in Shelby County. Now that employees are working remotely, some want to know, why can't they work outside of Shelby County if they're working remotely and their work gets done?
Well, I mean, I think the short answer
is the city residency ordinance, which is a city law.
Right. So, I mean, I think the answer is they have to, because that's the law. That there are all kinds of policy reasons why the voters decided to do that. It's interesting. A good friend of mine, Dan Norwood, who's also an employment lawyer, he said to me the other day, and I thought it was pretty brilliant. He said, work is no longer a place, it's an activity. And, I'm in my 50s. I grew up thinking of, I'm going to work as I'm going to go to this other place. And I still do that. But for a lot of people, that line is now blurred. And, we're never going to be able to go back to 2019. And the genie's out of the bottle, right? I mean, people know they can work remotely. People know that they can be just as accountable and productive remotely. And it's going to be interesting to see what happens over the next 5 years for precisely that, that issue. Police officers have to come to the city to police, but maybe they don't have to come to the city to do certain administrative jobs that they're currently doing. What if I have an apartment in the city or in the county, but I'm working from St. Louis, Missouri, because that's where, I have a friend who stays there. And so that's where I am. It is just mind-boggling, the changes we're all going through. And I think that we're never going to be back to a situation where at any given moment in time, 100% of the people who work for an organization are actually present there.
Okay, so do you think that it would take, that there's a possibility of having, of course, you'd have to have it on the ballot, that there could be something on the ballot for residents, voters to address pandemic times for employees to be able to work remotely outside of Shelby County? I know that there would have to be an ordinance. Do you think that would be possible, that we would have such an ordinance on the ballot?
I think it's certainly possible. I'm not sure that, the issue is not where they work. The issue is where they live.
Yeah.
And so if you still have a residency in Memphis, Shelby County, and for whatever reason you're outside that area when you're working, I'm not sure that violates the ordinance. That's above my pay grade to know whether or not that's a good ordinance for the citizens to adopt. But to answer your question more directly, we're probably going to need a new ordinance for the 21st century city workplace. It's just not going to be as workable as it used to be.
And that's something that would have to be addressed by elected officials, because they have to determine or decide whether or not something like that goes on the ballot. So let's go back to dealing with the pandemic, with families, with daycare, with children, and with schools. So many families are having issues with, how do I take care of my children during these times? How's the workplace being sensitive to those needs? And should the workplace be sensitive to those needs?
So
I'll
yeah,
take one of you.
I'll start off, but I wanted to just say something, Gail. I don't remember where I saw this at, but it was like we have like 9 million job openings, and they said that 10% of those people said that they would take a pay cut to continue to work from home. So that's just a little nugget I wanted to throw out there for you.
So, but 90% did not.
Yeah, but 10% said that that's still 10% saying that they would.
But 90% said no. And I've read those numbers and stuff, and I often wonder that they say that now, but 5 years later, would they stay at that pay cut? Would they want to stay at that pay cut to stay home? That's just my question to myself. I wonder.
Yeah. I guess it just depends on the situation. But yeah, I do think that employers should be sensitive to employees that need time to deal with, if your daycare is shut down, schools is going to virtual learning. And again, I should say that I've only been with Buckman for several months. So I'm going to speak on my previous company that I was with for years. But what we did there is we allowed people to take those, even though that we were not covered under the law because we didn't have the 500 people, we had more. So we were exempt from that. But we allowed mothers or fathers that asked for that. We gave them 14 days. It was 14 days that was paid. And we allowed them that time to try to make arrangements for childcare for their kids or set up some kind of education for somebody outside the home to help them with making sure that the kids were, doing their homework or whatever. But that's what we did. We gave them the 14 days to use as they please. They could do it consecutive days, or they could take, a day here, a day there until they got their stuff set up and ready to do whatever they needed to do. But the days were allowed and they were compensated for that time.
And you all did mention that companies over 500, they probably have some plans that are easier for them to work with for their employees. Like MLGW, we did allow employees X number of days to be off for COVID. We, out of 2,700 employees, we had a good number of maybe about 800 who were eligible to work remotely. MLGW has done an excellent job in making sure the workplace is safe. If you come in, you must wear a mask. You must social distance. They have an incentive for employees to get vaccinated, and those numbers continue to grow each day. And they sanitize, and they constantly sanitize. So could you all address just how some companies are making the workplace safe for their employees, and also how important it is and what incentives companies are doing, or how important it is to incentivize employees to get vaccinated?
So
well, I think go ahead, Lou.
Go ahead, Alan. Go ahead.
No, I think it's real important to incentivize people rather than mandating people to do anything. It's good business to do it that way. I have said you can not take the vaccine, but you have to mask. And you can't be an anti-vaxxer and an anti-masker at the same time. And so I think most of my clients, their environments, they feel they're pretty safe. Sanitizing is really important, and trying to social distance when you can. Plexiglass barriers, I think, have been proven to be non-evasive and very, very effective. And then just wearing the masks when you're talking with people, particularly if you're unvaccinated. If you're unvaccinated and you're interacting with somebody who's vaccinated, that's really about the same as two masked persons interacting with one another. The unvaccinated with a mask and the vaccinated without a mask. But I think it's a good policy to require everybody to wear masks, just so that there's no social stigma on who is and who isn't vaccinated. A lot of people really, they're sensitive about it. I don't know if they're embarrassed or whatnot, but nobody likes to be singled out. So I think it's good business to do that. And, Lou hit on it a minute ago, and I think she's absolutely right. Right now, if you're in business, workforce development is tough. There's something going on now, and people are not going back to their old jobs. They're not going back to jobs that you would think they would go back to. And it really doesn't matter whether you're talking about doctors or lawyers or engineers or teachers or, blue collar workers. Everybody's kind of doing their own thing right now. And companies are going to have to attract good people to come work for them. And one of the ways that they're going to do that is they're going to have to make, accommodations for remote working. They're going to have to make accommodations for childcare and, other caregiving situations. And it's not your dad's workplace anymore, to quote the Oldsmobile commercial. We've all got to rethink the way that we approach these regulations and the way we approach, what employers mandate, what they encourage, what they motivate. And, and compassion is just the right thing to do. We're all human beings, and we need to show each other respect. We need to be tolerant and patient with one another in these days, because everybody is, I get calls. People are so stressed and so anxious, and the nicer we can be to one another, particularly these days, I think is going to cut down a lot on employment disputes, because a lot of those disputes really come out of this anxiety, stress, and frustration more than, illegal discrimination or harassment or whatever. That stuff is, unfortunately, it's still around, but people are just on edge right now.
Well, you're definitely right about that. In this country, it's so much, it's anger and it's hate and it's all kinds of stuff going on. But before we move to the Q&A, I do want to mention something that I have seen on several national news networks, and that's where they were talking about in September, nationwide, the extra unemployment that were being paid to many people. Many of them chose not to go back to work because they were making more money receiving those funds. Well, supposedly, in Tennessee, it ended July 3rd. But in the rest of the country, it's supposed to end in September. So one of the things the stories covered and stated was that there's going to be major competition for jobs in September, that you're going to have so many people who will no longer be receiving those funds, who will need work, who will be seeking work, and then it will be very, very competitive. Do you all agree with that?
I don't.
Let me ask you this, Lou. How are people paying their bills when it stops?
Well, Mississippi stopped. I'm a native of Mississippi. So Mississippi stopped in, I think, June. They stopped before the state of Tennessee. And we have continued to struggle to find those industrial type jobs. What they're doing, how they're paying their bills, I don't know. But I would ask, you saw on the news debacle with one of the airlines. They were saying that we don't have pilots since the pandemic started. We don't have pilots. So where did the pilots go? I mean,
I'm curious. I really am curious. Where did they go?
Yeah,
did they retire? Did they just? Well, they probably can pay. Well, I'm not gonna get into that, but anyway, so is everybody just at home not working?
No, I really think people have had an opportunity to step back and look at their lives to say, is this really what I want to do? And now that I've had the opportunity, is there something I want to do myself? Is there some type of entrepreneurial thing that I wanted to do for myself that I can now that I have the opportunity? So, and I think it just, because, you know, we've lost a lot of people to this virus. So I think people have just, they're looking at their lives to say, is this what I want to do? And that's where I think some of the workforce is going. They're going to do jobs, figure out what they want to do on their own. So I think we're still going to struggle even after September to find certain type of jobs because,
would those certain type of jobs that you reference, are they in the food industry, the entertainment industry? What industries would you say most?
So we are a manufacturer. We are a chemical company. The company that I left was a manufacturing facility. And we both struggle to fill not just lower level positions, but we have some higher level positions, executive level positions that we need to fill that we're struggling. But I see the signs like everybody else that, you know, McDonald's and all those places that are paying like $12 to $15 an hour, and they're still struggling to find people, not good people, just people.
Just people. Yeah. Well, I did see a story about this being an opportunity for more handicapped people to be hired. Companies are looking at them as another resource. Mm-hmm. And there's been an uptick or a greater hire for people who fall in that category. So Alan, do you have any comment on the competitiveness of jobs come September when the unemployment runs out?
I think there'll be some competition, but I agree with Lou. I think you look at Tennessee as an example, as you pointed out, we haven't had that enhanced benefit in several months, and it really hasn't changed our outlook. Something's going on with the American people. And I think Lou is right. I think a lot of people have looked at their lives and said, it's funny, it really doesn't matter what job you have. If you just don't love it, no matter how much I may think it's a cool job, if the person who has it doesn't love it, they're going to go find something else. And I think that's happening. Like I say, I think it's happening top to bottom in the economy. I think people have decided, I think a lot of people went back and got degrees and they're in the middle of getting a new degree. I think there's some that decided, I got all these benefits, and so I'm gonna take this summer off and see what happens. I think people said, I don't like my job. I'm gonna go look for another job. And then maybe they found out, well, to get that job, I got to get some training. So it may be that in a year or so, all of this will shake out. But I think it bespeaks maybe the positive way to look at it is maybe we're getting more of a positive relationship with our jobs as a result of all of this. And we're being more selective, and we're not just going for a job we hate, but it pays well. So it's going to be very interesting to see what happens. I had Kelly English on my podcast. He owns a number of restaurants here in town. And he said, it's not just that people are leaving food service, but they're wanting to reinvent it. In the way you wait tables, the way you serve the public. And he says, all of that's happening kind of at once. And it's easier now more than ever to go out and start your own business. So it's going to be very interesting to see what happens over the next couple of years. And I don't think anybody really knows.
Okay, thank you. So Cynthia, do we have any questions?
Yes, we have one question. It says, why do employees have to use their vacation if they are exposed or contract coronavirus as an essential employee?
Well, I think that depends on the employer. There are some employers that probably do require you to take, require workers to take their vacation. If, for example, if they're out of sick time, some employers have PTO, paid time off, as opposed to vacation and sick time separately. Of course, if you're covered under the Family Medical Leave Act, you're required to exhaust those, but that's also unpaid leave. So there's no paid leave anymore. So if you want to be paid, then you probably need to use one of those benefits.
Any other questions or comments, Cynthia?
No, that's it.
Okay, so Lou and Alan, if you would you please just give a few, closing remarks, recommendations to employers or employees regarding this pandemic and how we need to move forward and just continue handling it in the workplace.
For me, Gail, I just think we need to, as employers, we have to have, I guess, empathy, sympathy of our employees and try to put ourselves in their position when they come to us to explain, the feelings that they have about the pandemic and where we are. I'll just say that that as an employer, we walk a tightrope when it comes to doing what's best for the company and the employee. And sometimes we have to put and I'm not saying this on behalf of Buckman, so please, I have to continue to say that. I'm saying this as an HR person and just as an individual that's been doing this for a long time. Sometimes we have to put our people before our profit.
And that used to be when I worked at Federal Express, the saying was people, service, and then profit. You put your people first.
Yes.
Alan?
Lou, I couldn't agree with you more. I think that's a great way of looking at it. And I think if you look at the really successful companies around the country, around the world, they're the ones that value their customers and their employees. If you take care of the people, the profits are going to take care of themselves. And I just, go back to what I said before. I just think that we all need to kind of cut each other a break. Whether you're an employer or an employee, just realize that everybody's trying to get through this as best they can. Nobody asked for this. Nobody's enjoying this. I suppose some people are enjoying it in the sense that they're enjoying maybe working from home or whatever, but nobody's enjoying all of the foolishness and stress that goes along with what we're going through. And at the same time, we're going through this at a time when we're really having a big change as a country. We're going through the digital revolution, just like our great-grandparents went through the industrial revolution at the end of the 1800s. Went from being an agricultural-based economy to a manufacturing economy. We're now going into some new era, and everything, our social interaction, our professional interactions, spiritual, religious, everything is changing. And you think about my kids, your kids, if you're my age, they grew up completely differently than we did. From the ridiculous, the fact that when I was in high school, there were 4 channels. Now there are 4,000 channels. My kids have always had something like this. When I was growing up, the phone was had these wires attached to them and everything in between. And we've just got to figure this out, and we need to slow it down and not feel so entitled. Employers don't need to feel entitled and take their workers for granted. That they're just going to show up tomorrow because they need my job. Same thing with workers. Don't feel entitled to the job. Don't feel entitled to certain treatment. And hopefully we can come together and work things out. Now, if people could do that, Lou and I would be out of jobs. So, I'm not going to hold my breath, but I really hope that people do try to work through this and, particularly if you're an employer, pick up the phone, call your lawyer, call your HR professional, ask the questions, dot your I's, cross your T's. I always say HR compliance isn't just, you're not just doing it to be legal. It's good business. It's good business to listen to people like Lou. business to listen to your lawyer. So do that.
Well, I want to thank each of you, Lou, Gaddy.
We all listen to Gale Jones Carson.
Yeah, listen to me. Tell my granddaughters that. So Lou, Gaddy with Buckman, thank you so much. Alan Crone, who has his own law firm and who is an amazing government relations, I say government relations person, because you've done everything and we won't even get into the other politics. And I also want to thank our staff who've been working and who always work very hard to make these shows successful. And that would be Cynthia Haley and Terica Lamb and Nathan Smith and Darren Sharp and Erica Horton and Lillian Johnson. And I hope I haven't missed anyone. And I want to thank our guests for watching today. And I'm hoping that our guests today provided you with some very useful and helpful, beneficial information. Please mask up. And if you can, please get vaccinated. Thank you for watching Power Pivot. Thank you. Thank you. I should have brought my mask.